Eden Koz here with Just Be, and we are about to take a spiritual boom. We are at an unprecedented time in human history where we are transitioning from 3D to 5D within the great spiritual awakening. This video and audio podcast is the place for you to find your truth beyond politics, your sovereignty, your voice. Let's kick up your vibration now. By the way, each episode ends with the Just Be practice to do just that. And as we begin the show, just to know a little bit more about me, I'm a soul realignment specialist, meditation master, and dimensional healer. Learn more, and there's merch also at EdenJustBe.com. Let's get this party started. Hopefully that's gotten. And you setting your intention, I sometimes do a little shaky shake because I get really excited about things.
Vision for humanity. That's my intention.
I love that. Eden, Just Be, Spiritual Boom in association with the Grassroots Warrior Network. Hey, Susan, good afternoon in the UK. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Yeah, good. It's a bit cloudy here in the UK, but it's nice energies. Jupiter is just about to go direct, so that's exciting.
Okay, maybe we can talk about some of that today because I know you are. Susan has a crazy, incredible toolbox, and I know astrology is one of the things that's in your pocket as well. Okay, quickly before I read Susan's bio and we get started. Okay, so we were recording. So I published this 2 weeks after. So we were recording February 4th, 2025, because I like people to know when we're actually talking. I got my hands on this powerful I do not consent declaration of freedom. I'm going to read this for a moment from Lisa Renee, shared with me by the beautiful people at the Planetary Activation Organization. It's long. I read it out loud to myself on Sunday, and it was just, I felt so good after it. So I'm looking, I have my little do not consent posted on my wall over here, and it's about a sentence. But this went through everything. So when Susan and I are done, I'm going to invite, I'm going to go ahead and publish this live today, but it is reading through it and doing a meditation with it. So it'll probably be 10 to 15 minutes. So y'all feel free to come. It is beautiful, 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 beautiful. And quick nod before I read Susan's bio. Wow, the world right now, especially in the United States, it is just, well, literally on fire, but on fire in a good way. Okay, so Susan Kennard, spiritual scientist with a background in psychology and psychotherapy, which spans over 25 years. Susan has expanded her expertise by incorporating energy healing modalities into her practice. This unique blend of knowledge and skills has allowed her to develop her own powerful approach to helping others. Like we said, she got a toolbox. Susan is a sought-after therapist, speaker, and presenter. Her specialization in PTSD has led her to work closely with veterans and those who have endured significant trauma. With a clear channel to spirit in the higher realms, Susan's work is known for its speed, directness, and accuracy. As medium and channel, she collaborates with her Galactic guides, incorporating channeling, toning, and light language to facilitate deep healing and heart-filled activation, empowering individuals to manifest their desires effortlessly, if I can say that effortlessly. She is the author of Awaken the Light Within Your Heart and also a new children's book, The Guardian's Wings. She has been featured on British BBC Two and ITV TV, Sky, and interviews on international telesummits and podcasts. She also hosts her own podcast, The Spiritual Awakener, and has cultivated a growing following on YouTube. Before my first question, going back to the I do not consent declaration, I will not do that audio. That will be video only, just FYI. Okay, Susan, my first question to you. Okay, I had 2 awakenings, in my 20s, like I know you had yours in your 20s, which turned me on to God, source, energy. Okay, then when COVID hit, that's when I had my second awakening into the truth of the world and the matrix, and that we're on an enslavement planet, and more about the galactic influence. Okay, can you tell us about both of your awakenings with that, or did they coincide? All right. Oh, take a breath.
I can.
Please. Thank you.
Well, the first one, I was 27, I'm 55 now. So I was 27, and it's a kind of around your Saturn return in astrology. Of course, I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
And I went through this awakening where a friend of mine, who actually was an ex-boyfriend, took his life. And at the time, I was studying my postgraduate degree in psychotherapy. I had my degree in psychology, and I was working alongside in child protection. So I was doing all this stuff.
Ooh.
And and this happened, and it happened. It was very sudden. Obviously, it always is when someone takes their life. And his girlfriend phoned me one night in the middle of the night, because he was in New Zealand, and said, "I've got something to tell you." Anyway, that was the shock. And then it was about a couple of months later that I had this really weird experience. And this experience was that someone had walked in the room. I was fast asleep. Someone had walked in the room, and there was also a dog as well. And this sense that I was awake, but I wasn't awake. And to be honest, then it was quite terrifying, but it wasn't, if you know what I mean. It was like,
Yeah.
I can't move. And yet it didn't feel that I was scared of that person or anything. And I felt almost like someone touching my shoulder. And of course, I then later found out who it was. But at the time, it was the first experience of something that I couldn't explain. Because being somebody who works with the analytical side of my brain, I used to, I was a psychologist, I was trained to be a psychotherapist. I'm actually a neuropsychologist as well. And I love analytics and I love science, and I'm very evidence-based. So of course, what happened was this came out of the blue, and this is what happens with our awakenings. Something comes right in our face. And literally, I tried to evidence it out. So what happened was, I had a couple of months later, I just kind of felt I didn't want to go to sleep. I didn't want it to happen again. And then someone got me a reading. Now, I'd never had a reading before. And someone said, "I'm so fed up with you talking about this, like visitations in the night. Like, stop talking about it. Just, find out what it was." So I'm like, okay. So this person knew nothing about me. I had this reading. I'll fast track this, by the way. And essentially, they looked at my hand, they held my hand, and they told me everything about Martin. I actually named my son after, but Martin, and our journey together, and the traveling we'd done, places that no one would have known that we went to in New Zealand, and his personality and everything. And at the end, she said, "He's really sorry. He didn't mean to scare you, but he wanted to let you know that he was okay and that life goes on." And then she looked at my hand and she said, "And by the way, you're walking the path of a master psychic." And I just said, "No, I'm a psychologist. That's not for me at all." Well, of course, obviously I didn't realize that my soul had chosen all of this. So then I spent a couple of years.
So let me ask you this, though.
Trying to disprove it.
Were you
Yeah.
shocked at what she was telling you? Or
Yeah.
are you just like, what the heck?
Absolutely. And then, of course, completely in disbelief about what she saw in my energy. And I wish I'd kept that reading, we wish we kept that reading, and I never did. It was on a tape. That shows my age. And at the College of Psychic Studies, I decided I would go and I would try and find out more about this stuff. This is in South Kensington in London. And I'd try and find out more about it. And I actually tried to disprove it. And by trying to disprove it, I ended up opening up all of my abilities, which we all actually have. And I started to see spirit, I started to hear, I started to see into the body. All of that stuff happened. And then I found myself, this is fast tracked, found myself living a parallel life. So working in child protection as a trauma specialist with children that have been abused and drugs and alcohol, and working on the platforms in London, giving evidence of survival. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
And at that time, it wasn't really something you talked about. So I kind of kept it a bit hidden. I had this kind of like double life going on. And, now when we look at awakening, obviously I help people align to why they're here, what their true mission is. And it's great because you can talk about it. You can talk about it. You know, we've had the witch wounds, we've all done it. You know, it's all been in our lifetimes, our timelines. And actually now we can talk about it. Whereas then it was kind of something that was weird. You know,
Mhm.
you talk to dead people, that's weird. So
Mhm.
that's kind of a fast track experience of my first awakening.
Wow. All right. Beautiful. All right. Tell us about your second. Did that just kind of come with the territory or yeah, what happened?
Second awakening was, I mean, I've been awake since that time, 27, right? So a long time. And kind of once you know, you can't unknow, right? And so I knew we were a soul. I knew we were having a human experience. I just wasn't quite as aware of, you know, the guides and so on. It was something I was learning. My second awakening was when, a little while later, when I met someone, I had my first baby, and then I had my second baby. And I realized that I was in a narcissistic relationship. And obviously, I'd chosen that for whatever reason. And I became a single parent. And I remember
Okay, how
sitting
did
on the
that
bed.
how did that happen? Did they, if you don't mind, I love getting really personal.
Oh, it's
Did they
okay. I will
leave
then.
or yeah,
Yeah.
what happened?
Oh, yeah, yeah, sure. So I could see this kind of happening, and I could feel that it was a really unhealthy relationship.
Mhm.
And because I'd worked in child protection before, I kind of could see the pattern, but I chose to ignore it because he was under the guise of being unwell. So of course I was in my fix it mode then, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, you know, healer written across my head, and I was like, you know, we can help this, we can do this, but it never ever changed. And it got to the point where I had two little babies, and I think the second one, Martin, was about 11 months old. And I realized that it wasn't, and I remember saying to my friends, if he was a nice unwell person, I probably still would have been in it. But
Mhm.
because he was really not very kind, I didn't. And I made a decision, and it was the hardest decision. They were only babies. And I literally asked him to leave. I happened to own the house, so I asked him to leave. It
Wow.
took a bit of time, and eventually he left. And I had nothing. I mean, honestly, this is a long time ago now. Mine are 17 and nearly 16, so it's a long time ago. But I had no idea how I was going to support my children. I had no idea I was going to pay the mortgage, but it was the right thing to do. And I know that I remember seeing, because I had my trust, I remember seeing my nan in spirit. I remember sitting on the bed when I was making decisions to do this.
Yeah.
And I knew when the time was right, it would be the right time. And I looked over to the left of me, and I could see these blue sparkling lights. And I got this sense that it was my nan. And I felt this sense of whatever I do, I'm always looked after. And I'll look back and I'll know there was a reason for it. But I didn't know what it was at the time. I just knew that my heart was driving me there. And yeah, my guys are telling me to say something, and I will in a minute. And essentially, from that point, that opened the doors to me taking responsibility for what I'd attracted. So then my journey, I mean, I was a psychotherapist. I'd been training in this stuff for years, hadn't even scratched the surface, yeah, of actually doing the inner work. And so, so I started doing energy work. I started to learn EFT, emotional freedom technique. And because it was so powerful and it started to transform my life, I actually trained in it. And that's, you know, a long time ago now. And I started to teach it and so on a bit later on. But what I realized is that, and I wanted to tell the world, like, I wanted to tell the world that,
Yeah.
do you realize you're a mirror for everything? And but no one could hear me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't do that anymore. I just quietly say what I need to say. But essentially, I wanted to tell him, and I actually told him, and I said, "Oh my goodness, this is great. What's happened? Look, we've both attracted each other for whatever reason." And he literally could not hear a
Nope.
word I was saying. So I went on my journey, and that opened doors for me. Obviously, I could look after my children, it was fine. And a little bit later on, I started to get interviewed. And I ended up being interviewed by national kind of publications and BBC Two and so on. And this was how the opening of my mission happened. So that awakening led me to actually step fully out of the closet, whereas, yeah, out of the spiritual closet. Whereas before, you know, I was behind the closet. You know, but you know, the doors were shut. I was not saying who I was. I was not, you know, talking about that we're a soul having a human experience. I was keeping it all very closed doors to please everybody, you know, to be normal, to be a psychologist and just be normal, yeah, and acceptable. Of course, I'm very unnormal and unacceptable now, which I'm really happy about.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, a normal person. I love
Thank
that.
you.
How
Yeah.
was being a single parent? Can you describe that for a moment?
Do you know what? When I say to people about this, I say I actually just did it. And when I think about it, you know, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And I just think that you have this drive within you, that the most important thing are your babies, and no one else is going to do it better than you. And literally, I just put my whole heart and soul into making sure that they were okay. And I still do the same. Obviously, I live my mission and they see me living my mission. They're starting to open to live their missions, which is amazing. They're
Oh,
very connected children, they always have been. And they now don't see mum as weird, whereas they did when they were growing up.
yeah.
They're now really opening to their gifts. But I think you just do it, you get on with it. And one of the things, and thanks, the guys are reminding me now, one of the things that's really important is to remember that there's never a wrong direction. There's never a wrong path. Those paths always take you to wherever you need to be. And you might meander a little bit, but you're always guided. And your higher self and your guides, like my guides behind me on the screen, you know, if you imagine you've got those beings with you at all times, you're never on your own. And I think that's one of the key things to remember, that, you know, you might not be able to see what's on the other side. And definitely when we start talking about the world in a moment, you might not be able to see what the outcome might be. And you might not be able to see where you're going in your life, but you're always going to be guided. And I think that's one of the key things about life, is to know that you're never on your own, even if you're physically on your own.
Hmm. So knowing, okay, we're going to talk more about going 3D to 5D in the new earth in a second. Yeah, for me, when it came to really realizing there is a dark side on this planet, and of course, also understanding that I am the dark too, that we're not separated from any of that. Did you have an aha moment with that, or again, was that kind of gradual in terms of seeing the duality that's on the planet?
Yeah, I had an awakening with that as well. We have all these awakenings, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I used to teach, the babies were about 3 and 4, and I used to teach at home circles. So I've been a medium for, you know, about 30 years now, and I used to teach them in circles. And I had an advanced circle and a beginner's circle. And in the advanced circle, one day, somebody came into the circle and they started spitting and doing really nasty things. And they were very, you know, they had a lot of dark energy with them.
Okay.
And that was the first experience I ever had. I was all like, oh, everything's lovely, you know, everything's, you know, it's all
Mhm.
light, it's all lovely, you know, just be positive. And then I realized that actually there is a big contrast in life, and I needed to see that. And that led me on a journey to understand that, you know, there is dark, there are dark energies, there are entities and so on around, and there are people that hold that energy. Okay. So that was my first opening to it. And then I realized that I got someone involved and helped her to help me understand how we could actually clear those energies. So I started doing that. And I can see in people if they've got any energies with them that are dark. But the key thing about that is that frequency. So as we are raising our frequency, that the energies of the dark cannot come into our frequency in the same way as they would if we hold, and it's particularly fear. So if we hold fear, we've got a match, a mirror match to energies that also hold fear. Yeah. So that was one of my ways, because I mean, it was a long time ago now, but that definitely opened the door, and I actually nearly stopped doing what I did. I nearly stopped. I was like, right, I'm going to stop this. I can't do
Okay.
this. I can't, you know. And I think that was an attempt in a way. at that side, the dark side, the contrast side, to say, haha, good, okay, we're
We
not going to
knocked
have
you
you as
out.
a light worker in this world.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's
luckily, someone
you and I
told
have
me,
very similar experiences. Okay, go ahead.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. You know, and luckily someone in my circle said to me, you know what, just take a week off, consider it, and we want to come back. And I was like, okay, let's do this. So I just took a week, and I kind of, because I considered my children who lived in the home, right? So I considered them. And obviously my protection was for them. And I didn't want to bring people into my home that were going to cause, you know, problems in my home. It's where I lived. It's where my children lived. So I had to really consider it. And so I was more discerning about who came into my circle after that. And I actually spoke to them before they came in, and I sort of like, you know, is this right for you? Is this the right journey? So it taught me, it was a good teaching moment. And it taught me not just to, not everyone is coming from a place of, you know, beauty and love and light, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So discernment, because I was similar to you too. I was all like, oh, everything's good. Because I occasionally I do house clearings as well. So I'd walk
Ah,
into a
see.
house and just be like, oh, I see you there, and you might be a little dark or whatever, but sending you love. And then
Yeah.
I had a house clearing a couple years ago that was so demonic. I had to
Yeah.
call my teacher as well, going, I don't know what to do here. And she's like, oh, they
Hmm.
don't like you there. So that really allowed me to see that there is a definite, because I'm Satan, whatever, but there's a definite evil. Yet again. So, how do you recommend? Okay, knowing moving from 3D, the old Earth, to 5D. Let's
Hmm.
talk about that. What are some of your recommendations?
Sure. I mean, I think we are oscillating right now. So my perception of 3D is living in fear, living in shame, living in blame, projection, all of that. And there's no judgment with what I'm saying here. I'm just going to give a perception of how I see it.
Mhm.
So when we're moving away from the remembering that we're not separate, and I think there's a perception that we are disconnected, and
Yeah.
we're never disconnected. And I think when we can remember that we are connected to our source, and you spoke about that at the start, when we are actually remembering we are source, God, the universe, whatever we want to call it, and we're not separate, then there doesn't need to be the fear. And I think that when we start to feel into that and shift our perceptions, we come away from that old earth where perhaps we've been controlled. We've allowed it. Okay, it's a part of our journey. We've allowed to be controlled. We've allowed to be told what to do. We've had the fear of literally God put into us many lifetimes before, but definitely in this lifetime, and definitely over the last few years, unless someone's been in a coma, they may have realized that. And so literally we have, we've allowed that to happen. And the new paradigm is we're stepping into the fifth dimension, and even higher actually, because the
Mhm.
galactics that come in and work are higher than that on a frequency. But essentially the fifth dimension is that oscillation in between is the fourth. And I believe that the fifth is when some people call it ascension, but where we are remembering that we are this divinity itself, and that we're here to expand light on this planet, right? And that's part of it. But the middle bit is, okay, so I've got one foot in the old, where I'm arguing with someone or driving down the road, or, this kind of stuff. And then I've got most of my feet in the new. Okay. And I think we're at this point where we are, and people listening to you, they know, obviously on a soul level, but there's a bit that's like, am I sure? Can I trust this? Because the old paradigm of the 3D is so ingrained. The
Yeah.
medical model is so ingrained. Just to say, I'm not a doctor and I don't claim to heal or cure, just to give you that. But essentially, the medical model, we were indoctrinated literally into going down that road and saying they fix us, right? We
Uh,
were brought up with that as a child. We were brought up with
yeah.
it. Put this in your arm, do that in your mouth, all of that stuff. Oh, that's going to fix you, or that's going to stop you from getting something, right? And actually, the fifth dimension is I am my own inner healer. Oh, wow, great. I've woken up to that. why do I need to ask anyone about any of that? Because I have all the answers within me. But I don't think we're quite there. I think
Mhm.
we're on that journey. And I think we're looking at all the times that we were controlled by people as well, controlled by people, controlled by organizations and governments. And yeah. And so we're looking at that and going, oh gosh, okay, I wish I had known, or I shouldn't have done that, or something like that. And that's where I think we're going in this middle bit, which I actually think is a beautiful place. Yeah.
I want to add, if I may, I
Yeah.
went to a classic eye doctor yesterday because I do not typically, I don't do, like, I'm same age as you, 55, no medications, do not go to Western doctors. So I'm sitting in this kind of 3D world because I was hoping or desiring that my vision had improved. So it turns out it's the same, which is okay. But it was so interesting as I'm filling out the paperwork. Do you have insurance? No. List your primary physician, which I'm like, who do I put down here?
Yeah.
Because I don't have a primary physician. I won't. So it was kind of like the same thing. It was just like being in both worlds at the same time. And then, oh my gosh, Susan, this is so funny. He recommended some eye drops to me and he's like, do you have, insurance for drugs or whatever? I'm like, no, this eye drop would be $600 a month. But if you had insurance, 50. So I'm sitting there looking at all of it going, oh, right now I am right in it.
Yeah.
Okay. And the same thing, like I know I can heal my eyes, yet I still, yeah, it's like kind of being caught in the middle, even though, like you, I know a lot. I'm just, yet
Yeah.
there's still time. So it was so interesting to be a part of that world for a moment and not be it, but be in it. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. My children
Ah,
are going through the last 3D bit of the education system. I home
oh,
educated them for the last 5, 6 years. I
wow.
took them out before actually things changed in the world, and I took them out. I was kind of getting this intuition, like just pull them out. So I did, and they've done really well. And
Wow.
they're just at this last little bit where they're taking the exams that are the 3D doorway to things.
Mhm.
And as much as I know, and they know I know, and they know that this is not what life is about, actually, because we've not quite shifted into this place, they
Yeah.
still need those to go to the next step of where they want to go on their mission.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, well, maybe that's a perception, but that's where we are right now. So they are in this oscillation as well. And
Mhm.
especially my son, who's not even 16 yet, who is an animal whisperer, basically. He would live off the land if he could. And he just is like, Mom, I'm wasting my time. I'm sitting in this class, maths and English. He said, I'm wasting my time. And I said, just waste your time for another few months and then we'll be fine. So it's just, I said, just play the game. Just play the game. We're just going to get the
Play.
tick box
Yes.
and then you're done. And I think that's what we're doing here at the moment. We're still doing the little bit of the tick box.
Mhm.
We've got the mortgages on the homes, we've got the this, the ownership, the non-ownership, the this, we've got all of this. And we've seen with the fires that whatever you have, no matter how much money you have, no matter how much property you have, it can literally go in a second. Yeah. So I think it's showing us that, actually we come in naked pretty much, and
Yeah.
we go out naked. Yeah. And it's
Mhm.
like, actually, that's who you are. You are this beautiful soul, just choosing to put a little jacket on for a little while. And it's just have as much fun as you possibly can while you're doing it. Yeah.
And how do you feel? I feel that the age of your children, so I have a 23 and 20-year-old,
Yeah.
um, and so many younger people are starting to come to me as well, noticing because I feel that they've been probably the most heavily indoctrinated generation in terms of social media, in terms of pornography, in terms of
Yeah.
education, that they are going to be pivotal in waking up and helping us shift and with using. So I have a special needs daughter. She's just lovely.
Mhm.
And then I have
Mm.
another one who, same thing, always thought I was kind of crazy. And she is waking up to me. And within that, waking up to more, yet she's not wanting to look at the bigger picture. Let's call it that. Yet I
Okay.
think that's going to happen in the next year because it's going to have to, because there are going to be so many
Mm.
things that are just going to be in her face. What do you feel about this generation? That was my question.
That's a really lovely question. I can only go on. I mean, I work with teenagers as well, and quite often parents will get me to work with their children as
Yeah.
well, to help them. But when I look at my teenagers and their friends, around, I look at them and I realize that actually they're almost they're very wise. They're incredibly wise, and I think they're actually teaching us a lot. And I think the younger ones coming in are even more so,
Oh yeah.
on a frequency level. Mine are very blessed because they've never had a piece of medical intervention in their life. Well, my daughter's had an operation, but you know what I mean, in the
Yeah.
sense of, the blood-brain barrier stuff, and nothing that has kind of dulled their frequency. So they are very sensitive, but they are open to seeing a bigger picture. And my daughter, especially, my son more now, actually, I can see it in him, but my daughter sees people in a very different way to her peers see them.
Yep.
And she just sees them. And I think it's because, yeah, I've always taught them that every person you see is the light that they are, and they're just playing a role in your life. And I've always taught them that. But she sees people and finds it quite hard to see people and their energies because, and especially people that are in their fear and people that are in their control and so on. And she can't spend time with them for very long because she's like, oh no, I can't do that. And so classes don't work very well for her. She likes to
Mm.
be quite free.
Yeah.
But I think that what I'm noticing is that the ones that are really in touch with who they are and have got the space to be able to do that, and they're not always on their phones like this 24/7, and they actually do spend time in nature or they spend time with themselves, they're actually being guided to what they're supposed to do in the world. And that doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean that they've always, they're always doing what you think they should do. But you can see that the guidance is there. And even in some of the teenagers that maybe have been indoctrinated by the parental views and so on and what's gone on in the world, let's just say latterly, I can see a bit of dullness in their energy, but I actually also can see that they know where they're going and nothing is going to get in their way. And
Mm.
that is really beautiful to see. I do see some of them that are a bit older than yours, just that next age going up, where they have been told you have to have the degree, you have to be the top of your game. The pressure on these kids who are now adults has been, I've been watching it over the years with friends of mine who've got older children, and it's like, wow, my heart goes out to them because they've been so pressurized into thinking you have to have that degree to get into that, place, you have to have that level and all of this. I'm like, oh, wow. And I think it has really dumbed them down. Yeah.
Mm. Well,
Yeah.
it's
But
so
it's
exciting
good. I can see
that
it.
yeah, that all of that will be
Mm.
ending.
I do feel that. I do feel that the little ones coming in now as well. One of my daughter's friends actually, she's very young, but she's bringing a soul into the world. And I had a very different talk to her about it when she first found out. And I said, you know what? I said, whether you keep this baby or whether you don't, there's a soul contract there. And whichever you choose is perfect. And she chose to keep it.
Oh wow.
And which is, yeah, really beautiful. Not an easy journey, but chose to keep it. It's due soon. And I said, that soul is going to be so special. Said, you're bringing such a special soul into the world that's going to light up this world. And it's made her get through all of the kind of, the hard stuff that you get through, when you're pregnant at any age, right? And because she's got this vision for this soul coming in. So it's really, and it will be a special soul.
Oh my God. And I'm assuming she's like 16, 17 years old.
16.
Woo.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's okay. She's got a good network. She's got a good family. So yeah, it should be okay. But yeah, I'm so glad that it didn't happen to mine. Just because you know how hard it is to have kids, right? And
Yes. And
it's
you being a
like,
single parent
and
as well.
I would
Oh,
be, the one looking after our smoke. So
all right.
anyway,
So, in
yeah,
terms of doing our
yeah,
inner work, which is again so
yeah,
precious at this time, and galactic friends, yeah, bring all of that into your
sure.
speaking.
Yeah. So I do feel that what we see in what might appear the outside world is, and how we perceive it, is a perception of our inner beliefs. And so that doesn't mean, if we look at what's going on in the world and we don't feel anything, that we're soulless and we don't feel emotion. It just means that we're not necessarily attached to that emotion. So if we think of, let's give one example. Let's just say the fires, they've just happened. So let's just
Yeah.
think of that. So to think that you would lose your home and all your things, and possibly even people passing over, the feeling of that is you wouldn't want anyone to experience that, not your worst enemy, even if you have one. But the feeling that you have towards that is your inner work. Okay. And this is one of the
Good point.
biggest things about being human, I feel, is taking self responsibility for what is showing up and how you feel about it. So, a great one is our relationships and our bank balance. Those are two major things. So, if we look at our friend, smiling, the friendships, and our, relationships, work relationships, so on, and children relationships as well. But our bank balance is a great one. And it's how we feel. Do we feel safe? Do we feel secure? Do we feel that, we're going to be supported in every single way? And that doesn't mean you have to have 10 zeros at the end of your bank account, but it's the feeling that you have when you look at it. That's a really key one. Okay. And when you have your relationships with people, how do you feel? Not how do they feel about you, but how do you feel when you are with them? And I think that's a massive soul human learning experience for us to see where we are in our frequency. So just to expand that a little bit, and a really good tip is look at where you are in your life and how do you feel about it? Is it great? Do you happy where you live? Are you happy with what you're doing in the world? Are you living your mission? And I found that the truth, the authentic part of us knows exactly where we're meant to be. So I truly live my mission. I mean, I literally don't feel like I work, and I'm sure you're the same. And, to me, that's what it's about, right? It's like get up every day and love what you do and expand and not be thinking about, oh, how is that going to happen? Well, no, it just happens. It opens the doors. You invited me to come on your show, things like that. It's not hard, but it's only not hard when you're truly living your authenticity, when you're in your fear, when you're in your attachment to outcome. Thank you. Attachment to outcome. That's when you've got your inner work to do. So you can, if you're listening to this now, look at something in your life that maybe you don't prefer, something that's showing up that you're like, oh, that person's really mean to me, or, someone cut me up in the road on the car, or I didn't get the job that I wanted, or something really like that. And connect in with the feelings, because that is where your work is. But we're not doing psychotherapy now. The old days, let's trawl it out and see how awful it was, and what someone said to you when you were 6. And that does matter, but we don't have to do it that way anymore, because our frequency has shifted to such a place that healing is instant. Okay. So one of the things I use and help people with, partly is in my book, but partly just to connect with that part and that emotion. So say you feel fear, you put your hand on your heart, and this is just a very quick thing. I'm so sorry you feel so fearful. Okay, so that in that moment of acknowledging that part of you that feels fearful. You have no idea how old you were. You have no idea maybe what lifetime it was. And you have no idea, it might be epigenetics, you know, from your ancestors and your grandparents and so on. But it's showing up for you. If you were trawl through all of your childhood and did 6 months of psychotherapy, you'd never get to that place that actually showed up just then, because it's in your frequency as a match. So you go with the emotions, dis-ease in the mind, dis-ease in the body. Okay. So when you've got the dis-ease going on, you can feel the emotion of that. That's your work. And I've done this work for, 25, 30 years. And I've watched people in my community, in my soul family, that have healed themselves of, let's just say, some pictures of disease. Okay. And they've healed themselves by doing the inner work. So they've gone on the journey of trauma, releasing the perception of belief. What is this showing up in my body? What is this showing up in my bank account? What is this showing up? And they're living their mission. So I believe that where we are right now, if we can look at how far have we stepped into our true inner power and authenticity, is how far are we walking towards this fifth dimension and the life of freedom and abundance. That's kind of where we are. So starting with giving compassion to yourself and just keep going with it. So I'm so sorry you feel so afraid. I'm so sorry you feel so guilty about that. I'm so sorry you can feel it in your body. I'm so sorry your back aches. I'm so sorry, So you're actually acknowledging that part of you, but without knowing where it comes from. And that stops us from analyzing. Yeah.
There's so much to break free from. I've been noticing this past week thoughts that I have carried with me for so long that I'm like, why do I feel, oh my gosh, this isn't true? And I have held this for so long. So I'm trying to think specifically what I had. There was one that just, it was so obvious. Have you had any of those lately, or seen people that just wake up and, like, I know your kids, like, these diplomas, all of these things don't really matter. And, we were brought up to believe, again, you grow up and you potentially go to college and you get a degree and you work, and that Western mindset, when you're sick, you go to the doctor. There's so much to beautifully break free of. What have you noticed people doing that?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Can you give an example of one of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just thinking about how to explain this with somebody that I know.
Okay.
So let's think about, so perhaps something might have happened on your journey of 2020 or 21 or something like that. And something happened and you could see that perhaps that wasn't the right choice. And it led you down a path of this intervention and that intervention and another intervention, which led to this person, actually ending up losing one of their legs. And in fact, she'd be great to come on your podcast. Actually, I think she'd be a great person for you to talk to. And she's spiritually awakening. And she realizes that everything she'd been told all of her life was not true. And so she's waking up to this and realizing who she is. You got goosebumps, right?
I did.
Yeah. She's realized, she's come into my community now, but she actually heard me on another podcast talking about this subject and found me and started to talk to me. And now she's on this journey of realizing that actually maybe she's meant to have a voice for others in a way to help people so that they don't go down that road that she went down. And she's not sure how it's going to go yet. And no one knows, right? Our mission opens up in front of us. But watching somebody who went through such a lot of pain, a lot of emotional pain, a lot of anger, a lot of mistrust. She looks back on the early part of her life and realizes that she always lived in fear. So that decision to make decisions, she made them from fear, right? She never came out for a year. She stayed in the house during those times and was too afraid to go out. Yeah. And I'm watching her blossom through adversity, right? Through adversity. And I feel she's going to be a pivotal person to help other people remember who they are. And she's on that journey. So I do feel that there are so many people that are waking up, and whatever's happening in your life right now, whether you've got a diagnosis, whether you've, just split up from 20 years of being with your partner, whether you've lost somebody really dear to you, maybe a child or, somebody very dear to you, whatever it is that awakens you is absolutely perfect. But our job is to actually access that part of us that went down that journey for a reason. And I call that the Chiron in our chart. So the Chiron, known as the wounded healer, but I believe it's more than that. I believe it's, why did you come into this world? What did you come in for? What do I do? Mine's in my 5th house and at 3 degrees. Well, I nearly drowned at 3. I was in a pond and nearly drowned. That was part of my, oh, I actually do want to be here.
Hello.
and what do I do? 5th house is about children. It's about relationships as well. And I wrote a book about healing the inner child. I've just written a children's book, to help children remember who they are and that they're not on their own. So do you see what I mean? Like our Chiron in our chart is very much pointing towards, why are we here? So if we look at that for ourselves and we could say, right, yes, that happened and that was really awful and it made me feel this, actually, that's your gift. The gift is in adversity. And don't we always say everyone's got a story, right?
Yes.
And that story is the story that opens the door for others. And so I feel that's what massively has been happening in the world. Actually, my dad died suddenly. Yeah. And it was 4 days after he had his second, can I say these things on your podcast?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Say anything.
So he'd had the second COVID vaccine.
Okay. When did this happen? Okay. Second. So this was like 4 years ago, 3 years ago?
No, so he passed away 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Okay.
Gosh, the years just fly, don't they? Yeah, about 3 years ago. And so basically he'd had the second one and his wife was absolutely fine, but he, after 4 days, had a massive stroke. Okay. Now, my dad was okay. He was actually renovating the house I inherited and he was okay. And he had the second one and they literally, I'm glad that he actually did end up not staying, because he never would have wanted to live a life like that. But they put him in the ambulance, they got him to hospital, they told me he had COVID. I know he didn't. And I went in with all of the, the kind of, paraphernalia that looked like a spaceman. Yeah. And went in and the doctor stood in front of me, a lady doctor. And she said, he might have to lose his leg with blood clots all over his body. I'm like, blood clots all over his body? She goes, yeah, he's got this. We see this a lot at the moment. And I said, yeah, he hasn't got COVID. I said, he's not ill. He hasn't been ill at all. And she said, well, he's got, blood clots all over his body. And she just looked at me and I looked at her and we were not in a position to say anything, but she knew and I knew. And then I went in to see him and he was on the Liverpool pathway. That thing where they put them on morphine and something else, and she said, we're keeping him comfortable. And I was like, when someone tells you they're keeping you comfortable, that's the story, right? So anyway, I went in and I was lucky because I was able to, kind of say goodbye to him. And he'd had a stroke and he couldn't, but he did smile with his eyes. And I was able to, because I was in the spacesuit, he was really into the Galactics. So it's probably where I got it from. And
No
so I was able
way.
to kind of go, didn't expect to see me in a spacesuit, right? But whether he heard me or not, I don't know. But he definitely smiled with his eyes, right? And that was a prime example of the tick box of what someone passed with when they actually didn't pass with it. And actually, I know 100% that pushed him over the edge, having that second jab. So, I think we're going to hear a lot about this. And I think we are going to hear a huge amount about people being very unwell and affecting their physical bodies. But I do know that he took that from a place of fear. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I do feel that, we can clear that frequency. Did you know I've got a Vax chamber on my website? Did you know I've got a Galactic crystal healing chambers, a whole page of them. One of them is specifically for the Vax.
Oh my God. So I do vaccination healing as well,
See?
using Jesus and God consciousness. So yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. So
Yeah.
he was one of the ones. So I
Yeah.
have not
So you did
had,
it from fear.
I
Mm-hmm.
haven't had personal, but your own
Mm-hmm.
father died, quote unquote, died suddenly. I
Mm-hmm.
just watched
Mm-hmm.
last night Corners, and I've known this for a while, but now the blood clots are starting to be so long in people. Like there
Ah,
were massive
see.
blood clots, but now
Mm,
they're just growing, and
mm,
I've seen pictures of them. They are just and they look like little aliens, and they look like at any point I'm like, are there going to be little eyes that pop out from from
mm,
these as well? That when he took the jab, and
mm.
knowing all that how did you process that? Because the same thing has happened
I
with my
didn't
parents.
know that he'd taken it.
Okay.
So I found this out from his wife.
Okay.
And I said, well, what was happening? What happened? And she goes, oh, we just went up to the clinic, and we both had our jabs. And then he was really weird. And then he went to bed. And then a few days later, he tried to get up and he fell down and had the stroke. So, yeah, that's how I
Okay.
knew. I didn't know before.
Okay. Are you okay?
Mm. Yeah. Because my dad, being a medium, my dad came in and spoke to me for
Okay.
a whole week after he passed over. And so he was chatting to me, telling me loads of information. And I was like, oh, you're here again. Okay, hi.
Okay. So
So now
yeah.
I'm really at peace with it. But and he also said that it was his time. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's another thing, to really think about, is that someone gets run over, by a bus, someone on a plane crash, through a vaccination or whatever they're choosing to do. Actually, we also have to look at a soul's timeline,
Yeah.
and we have to look at the exit points. I was supposed to be flying 11:11. My ticket said 11:11 because I was traveling a little bit, and I ran out of money, and I decided to come back a week early because I had a wedding to go to, and I thought, oh, I'll come back a week early. And literally, I would have been stuck. I would have been fine, but I would have been stuck, not being able to get back. So
Oh,
look at how I was
geez.
looked after.
Oh, man.
7-7, I worked in Edgware Road at the Child Protection Centre there, and I was looking after a young teenager who was pregnant in Paddington Hospital. I had flexi hours, and I stayed with her a bit that night and did long hours till 9 in the evening. Went home, was going to go in at lunchtime, kind of the next day,
Mhm.
and realised there were no trains. Why are there no trains? Oh, there's been something that's happened at Edgware Road Station, which is where I went in at that time in the morning. And so did my colleague. My colleague decided to go in an hour early to get some work done. And I wasn't even going to go until lunchtime. So look
Oh,
at these things. If I was meant to be at 7-7, I would have been there because that was my time to go into work, right?
mhm.
The same for my colleague, the same for 11:11, the same for all sorts of things that have happened in the world. If it's your time and it's your timeline, that's what happens. So we also have to look at that and say, wow, these people have chosen to be an experience for an awakening for others. you know like my lovely lady I was talking about just then. You know, they've chosen to be an experience. And I think we have to look at that as well
Mhm.
and
And
not let it go to vain,
yeah.
you know, as an awakening moment, as a teaching moment.
Yeah. And during this time, too, knowing that everybody has come in and signed up to be here, whatever that may look
Yeah.
like. And those at 9/11 who crossed over when the buildings
Mm,
came down, they were a part of, this plan spiritually as well. So, yeah,
mm.
having the, again, being in it, but not being of it, yet, also knowing it's your parent, that's challenging as well, that
Yeah,
you have the
absolutely.
firsthand experience. Okay, Susan, I want to do
Yeah.
our practice. I want to be very considerate of your time, yet I do want to ask you, um,
Mm,
your galactic friends, who
yeah.
who who are they? Where do they come
Oh,
from?
okay.
Take a
Mm,
take a sip to drink before we
yeah.
talk about that.
So the first ones that started working with me many years ago were the Palladian Collective. And they're very polite and they always come in and they say, "We are the ninth dimensional Pleiadian collective and we are very pleased to assist you." They were here earlier, actually. They may come in a minute, but they always come in on the right side for me. And I see them as these kind of like silvery beings, very tall beings. The Arcturians worked with me for a long time as well. They come in and clear. Oh, so the Palladians come in and clear resentment, old resentment that's held in the heart, and they also
Mm.
balance the heart vibration, the love vibration within our heart. So they're very good at that. They come through tones and through sound with me. The Arcturians come and clear old stories. So they often show me sort of tablets of stories
Oh,
clairvoyantly with somebody. They kind of come at this side. So if I'm talking like this, is because this is where they come in. The Syrian High Council are very special. They come in and they very much are the ones that do a soul transmission.
mm.
So this is where I have to get out of the way, and they'll come in and they're kind of a bit kind of regal and a bit powerful, and they come and I can feel their energy and see them, and they're like, we wish to give a soul transmission. So this is when I'm working with people one to one, and so I have to get out of the way and they come in and speak to them, and I can't remember what they say, but I know at the time what they're saying, and then quite often they'll come through with light language, to bypass the mind basically,
Yes.
for people. So they come in, they're amazing. The newest ones that have been working with me are the Rainbow Galactics, and I've been trying to get them to give themselves a different name, but they will not, and they just want to be known as the Rainbow Galactics. I'm like, it's a bit weird. And they're coming in for ascension. So they are very much here, rainbow being the optimum frequency, that we are that rainbow light. And so as they come in, they're starting to really help us ascend to that frequency. So they've been talking to me recently about what I put in my body. So high vibrational foods. I've been veggie for a couple of years now, but high vibrational foods, and I've been realizing not to eat as much as I used to. So we used to think we need to eat this, and this, but actually we don't need as much food as we used to. We're more living on frequency and light. And so they are coming in a lot at the moment to assist us in preparing our physical vehicle, our crystalline field. Our DNA is shifting to the strands that have been laying dormant for such a long time. I can't evidence that for you, but this is what they tell me. And so I watch that with people when they receive the Ankh activations, and I see the strands opening, and that's really
Oh, it's
beautiful.
so neat.
They were actually, the Galactics were the first ones that showed me what was going on within the DNA when people had recently just, taken the jab, and they showed me a separation between the soul star and the earth star, and then they showed me the almost like the, is it telomeres, that I'm hearing the word telomeres. So
Yeah.
anyway, the telomeres kind of separating at the ends of DNA. Does that make sense? Yeah,
Hmm.
that's because that's what they started to show me. I'm just hearing that word. And they started to show this to me, and I'm like, what is that? And then they're saying this is what the intention was to separate us from our true consciousness of
Yes.
knowing. Hopefully I don't get deplatformed for that. But anyway, that's what
It's the truth.
I've been told.
Yeah,
And this
because
is
that's what my healing
is
does too, is reconnecting you to, to soul, to spirit. Yeah, it's completely agree.
exactly then.
Yeah.
Perfect. So it's great to hear that, isn't it? And have that
Mhm.
kind of confirmation with people, because the guides will come in and tell us something, but it's like, okay, well, that must be it then. You have to trust that. So I saw that a lot with people. And then what I've recently seen is that, the Galactics are a very high frequency, and what they've been doing in the chambers is coming in the Galactic crystal healing chambers and actually reformatting the neural pathways in the brain. And that is fascinating to see, where people are they're clearing their neural pathways in their brain relays, but they have to consciously want that.
Yes.
You step into that chamber, you've made that decision, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And let's move into the practice. Okay, thank you for sharing
Mm-hmm.
all that. And then my piece on this is there's healing for all of it.
I agree.
Whatever decisions you have made, again, no judgment if you took the jab or whatever. Like this, again, as we talked about too, Susan, just adversity. So some of this was to, I believe, to kind of shock the system, to wake you up, and that you're not alone, that there is healing for everybody. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing what you saw. Okay, what are you going to bring to us today? Very talented person in terms of
Ooh,
helping with this ascension. What you got?
yeah.
Just be
Well, let me have a
practice.
chat with them.
Indeed.
Let me have a chat with them and see. So let's first of all, let's come into our heart space. So
Okay.
let's take a breath and put our hands on our heart. And the way that I like us to come into our center is to take a breath in through our nose and then hold. So obviously release when you need to, but let's just do that 3 times. Hold and come into the center. The Rainbow Galactics are here. Okay, so coming into the center, and then draw our attention through our breath down to under our feet to our beautiful Earth star. And if anyone finds it hard to connect to that, just imagine silver cords coming down from our feet. And then just for a moment, imagine the Earth is golden. So your beautiful Earth star is settling into this golden Earth, the Earth that you are creating. Good. And let's draw the attention up to our heart and up to the crown of our head. And let's just imagine that we could see the stars beyond the stars. So those beautiful nights where you can see more stars than you ever can see. And just imagine the stars beyond the stars. Excuse me. And I want you to focus on a beautiful 6-pointed star and imagine it expanding and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is your soul star. And I want you to see almost like a beam of light shining down on you from this soul star, connecting you to the earth, to Mother Earth, to Gaia, and to your alignment. So imagine that beautiful light around you. And let's come into our heart and imagine a beautiful light in our heart expanding. And so as it's expanding into every single cell of our body, opening up those cells for healing any dusty bits that we no longer need, expanding out. Good. Let's invite in our guides. So they're already with us, but let's invite our councils in, our guides, our angels. And let's just get a sense of them around us. And let's just say thank you to them for supporting us on this journey. Okay, good. So the Rainbow Galactics are stepping forward, and I feel that they wish to come in and do some healing of the heart, actually. So heart healing at this time, they're saying, and also to offer us an activation. So this is an activation for our own mission. So we all have an individual mission with a very directed spiritual goal to bring more light to this planet and to ourselves. And what they're saying is that receiving this activation is our free will, that we just need to say a yes in our heart and we can receive it. So let's just see where they're going with this. So one sec. Okay, so I see them stepping forward. So just imagine that you can see these beautiful beings and invite them to step forward. They come from pure love and they are here to assist us on our journey, on our ascension pathway. And there are many of them, but many of them are in rainbow, kind of almost like cloaks. So just get the sense of the rainbow frequency there in front of you. And they're coming in and they're placing their hands on our hearts and releasing anything that no longer serves us, that is not of love, they're saying. So they wish to release anything that is not of love. So just give them permission to do that. Good. And just maybe think in your mind if there's something that's troubling you at the moment in your life, something that's showing up that you really don't want in your life, or you're feeling you want to change. And just ask them to release anything that is held there in your heart field, in your mirror. Good. And so here comes the activation. So it's going to come in a tone. I'm hearing a tone and they're showing it to me first. It's going to come in through the crown and it's a rainbow frequency. And it's going to come in through the crown all the way through, lighting up our energy centers, which are much higher frequency than they've ever been. And they're not like the old chakras and the old frequency. They are the ascension ones. So we're going to bring that through. And so just bear with me as this tone comes in, as you receive. So take a deep breath and just feel that energy of expansion through your energy centers. Aha, they're coming in now and they're talking about the pineal gland. They're talking about our access, our light center, bringing more light into our body. They're saying that there is quite often a calcification sometimes in our body, and they want to release this calcification. So they're coming in with light language. So just allow yourself to receive. If you've never heard light language before, just be open. So I'll get out of the way. Hold on. Ikatalayana da, Utushtalina, Gadishtalayana Diana Dushtalayana da, Udokalaydinistala, Akaladinina, Udushtali, Akalali Dushtalayana, da Dushtalina, the Gita Dushtalayana da, Ukalana, Yelidishtali, Dushtatayla, da Gina, Dushtalayana, Akalalina, Dela, da Dushtalayana, da Dushtalayana da. Take a deep breath. And just feel that light throughout the whole of your body. And just check in with that soul star above your crown and just feel that light flooding through. And what they're saying to me is just to consider what is possible for you now. What is possible? To step forward onto your mission, onto the next part of your mission. And to know that they're always with us. They're always surrounding us with love. They are talking about the way they intervene with interference of this planet, that they are standing by at all times, that there's nothing for us to fear, that they are right by our side, and that they do not need to come through me, they're saying, this channel, that you can bring them and invite them to work with you directly. And they say, we are the Rainbow Galactics, and we are very pleased to assist you at this time. It is a beautiful time of expansion, and we are excited for the openings of soul consciousness. And so it is.
Is that funny? Was that your phone?
Mm.
That basically was saying, we're all done now.
Yeah, they're basically saying we are done. But it was really beautiful. My eyes are actually watering. I think one of the things they showed me just now, as we were coming back, was that they were almost like the guardians, and they were standing by, and that almost like they had this energy around the planet, that they were shielding the planet. So it was a beautiful thing to see. Oh, how are you feeling?
Good. I feel much more relaxed. Isn't it, Susan, so great for, let's say, people like us during this time? Because it was same for you. I started doing this. I started waking up in my later 20s, started doing this work in my 30s. And at that time, was from the South, USA. So that very conservative, where, told many times you're a cult leader, devil worshiper. But now we can just, it's so good to be out of the closet, so accepted, so needed. It's just wonderful to look back at those times when, you had to come out of the closet kind of thing and feel, and desire to be accepted, even though a part of you is like, being the spiritual warrior, you just have to do it. Like there's this calling that you just do it regardless. Yet now, here I am, here you are, we're doing this, and it's great. And it's so needed, and it's so necessary. And this is the truth. I also want to thank you so much, because this is what this podcast is. It's not just sharing the truth of the ascension and all the goody bits or whatever, but it's the, talking about how it has affected us and what we've been through and our personal experiences. So thank you so much for sharing that. And because of that, YouTube does shadow ban me a little bit, but I have other outlets, where, and it's time for this to really get through even more. So thank you so much for sharing your heart, for sharing your story, and for sharing that powerful experience at the end. And thank you for being here with me.
Thank you for inviting me. And I really hope that there's some seeds planted today, and that people can realize that we are all one, we are unity, and that no matter how much work you've done on yourself, no matter how many years you've been awake or haven't been awake, there's always a soul expansion on the way.
Beautiful. All right. That's a great way to end it. All right, everybody. See you, hear you next week. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks. Bye.
Y'all, find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Truth Social, as well as Rumble, BitChute, YouTube, plus a plethora of other audio directories like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So like, subscribe, do it all. See ya.